The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Welcome to Financial Rebellion. Good morning, good morning. Carolyn, good morning.
Good morning.
Do we have a show for you? Oop, let me get my screen. I am in a hotel somewhere in Oklahoma and still trying to get my hair done. Anyway. So we've got a lot of news to cover this morning, Carolyn, and Carolyn and I have just been in a series of meetings on programmable money. So we crafted this show in response to what we learned, and we learned a lot. So, Lou, let's just start in on the news. First story.
Yes.
So this is a
Go ahead.
wonderful special person. You tell us about it, Carolyn. This is someone I absolutely adored.
Warner Mendenhall unfortunately died within the last week or so. Apparently, he'd been ill for quite a while, and a lot of his admirers had sent in money on a crowdfunding site for his family. I had no idea that he had cancer, and I had no idea he was in Ohio. I probably would have gone to see him if I'd known that, because I'm in Cincinnati. He is so important from the PrEP Act perspective, and also in his case in the Fifth Circuit of the federal court in Texas. The Brooke Jackson case. It was a False Claims Act case, which means the plaintiff, well, it's the relator. The plaintiff is called a relator because it's not really a plaintiff, because the relator is suing on behalf of the U.S. government, saying that the government was wrongly billed, fraudulently billed. And so the case involved Brooke, who was was working for a contractor of Pfizer on clinical trials, and her case basically said that clinical trials weren't done correctly. They were fraudulent. And the incredible thing is that the judge ruled that the U.S. government got exactly what it wanted, even though there were injuries from the shots, even though the clinical trials were badly done or not done at all. And it also exposed what the terms of the contract were between the government and Pfizer. And it basically was unlike any government contract that you would see. It had none of the criminal penalties, and it did not require Pfizer to conduct clinical trials. Did you all have any idea of that? And it also indicated that the government, that the military was involved in the contract. So it exposed the fact that this was a military operation, and that the shots were countermeasures to bioweapons, so under the law. Yeah.
So I just want to say that this was, first of all, it took enormous courage and real legal work to get the case to the point where, Brooke Jackson and Warner, I think it's Brooke Jackson, is that correct?
Yes, Brooke Jackson.
I think so. Brooke Jackson and Warner teased out the information that, in fact, so the government's saying safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. And what they teased out was the fact that as a military operation, it didn't need to be approved by the FDA. That was sort of a phony look.
Right.
And in fact, the reason the government hadn't been defrauded is they engineered the fraud. In other words, they wanted a fraud, they paid for a fraud. Right. They wanted a fraud. They paid for a fraud. They got a fraud, so they weren't defrauded, because the fraud was the government's fraud, not Pfizer's. And,
Right.
And when you pulled all that out, it made it much easier for someone like CHD or many of the groups fighting the harm and the killing and the disabling that this injection was doing. to prove that it wasn't safe and effective. And the
Right.
government knew it wasn't safe and effective. And from then on, if you look at what happened in terms of courts pulling out the Pfizer documents and Naomi Wolf and Lisa Kelly doing the whole Pfizer papers, it just opened up the floodgates. And I have to say, Werner was fearless. He's such a wonderful person. He was such he was a great extrovert. He would bring everybody together. He would take on these cases that were impossible and find a way to encourage people to finance it. And, this was just a marvelous human being and a wonderful freedom fighter. And we're so grateful that we knew him. And we just want to take time to just everybody say a prayer for Warner and his family and just say thank you for marvelous leadership like this.
Right. And
Just an incredible man.
the irony is that he lost this case, at least at the lower court. I don't know where it ended up eventually, but he lost the case, and he also lost the Grace Scarra case. But they made such a huge impact on the people who were following the issues that he got a lot done, even though the cases were actually legally lost.
Yeah. So you lost, but you won, because if you look at the information and knowledge you teased out, both of them were huge wins,
Right.
despite the loss. It reminds me of Denzel Washington's great speech, "Fail forward."
Fail forward, yes.
Warner was the fire horse charging and failing forward. Okay,
And
well, special
Sasha
prayers,
Lottie-
Warner, and
Sasha Latypova also wrote a wonderful obituary
Right.
explaining the case and the importance of the PrEP Act, the monstrosity of the PrEP Act in bringing about something called emergency use authorization, which is not approval of a vaccine or a
Yeah.
so-called
Well,
vaccine.
Warner, we're so glad we knew you. Thank
Right.
you. Anyway, next story, Lou.
National Week of Action
National
Against.
Week Against Alpers. Can you explain this?
Yeah, this auto. I guess
go,
it's
Carol.
auto license plate readers. So there's a link to. There's a big movement to stop Flock Safety and the other companies who are providing these automated or auto license plate readers. I call them just license plate readers, but you can go in and click through and I guess sign something, but
Right. I just got a 2 calls, and I haven't had a chance to return it, from somebody in North Carolina saying, "Oh my God, the state legislator is turning over all the cameras, the flock cameras, to the State Bureau of Investigation." If you listen to some of the videos covering this, a lot of those databases are open, and as far as I'm concerned, they're turning it over to China and whoever. But China, Israel, and whoever else wants it is going all over the place.
I understand that in some cases where they've retracted the agreements with public pressure, they're not sure that they're turned off, so that they're putting bags over them or somehow otherwise making sure that they're not working.
Unbelievable. Okay, next story, Lou. So this one to me is the terrifying story so far this year. Argentina wants to allow software bots and agentic agents, to be able to create their own limited liabilities companies. So a software bot can create a company, go out there and literally, um, you know, kill literally, and they have limited liability, and there's no human involved. And you know all about this because you and I just were part of putting in a comment letter for Solari to the rulemaking under the Genius Act. And we said any action by the issuers of stablecoins to block, freeze, burn, uh, any action that could have serious ramifications to people's lives, to their assets, has to be made by human. In other words, the software can tease something something up for reviewing by a human, it can do the screening, but it can't block, freeze, seize, or burn. And there has to be a human involved. And
Who are you going to sue for murder
I
when when the when the when the bots kill people?
right, this is literally giving, either with financial actions or, a variety of whole actions, this is literally giving an AI agent the ability to kill and steal under the law with limited liability. It's so, it's so nuts, you don't even know what to say. Okay, next story, Lou. So speaking of seizing, under the sanctions regime, under sanctions, you can freeze a country, or a person's assets if they're under a sanctions regime. And Scott Bessent has bragged about the fact that the United States has seized over $1 billion of Iran's crypto. And I want to describe this more, but first let's look at a video of exactly what he said.
I believe that we have seized about $1 billion of their crypto. And
just outright seized it.
Just outright grab the wallets. Some of them may be like typing in right now and realize they might not have realized that their wallet had been grabbed. And we are working with our allies all over Europe to grab villas and houses and properties. And this is money that's stolen from the Iranian people.
Villas were stolen from the Iranian people?
So here's what's interesting, because we know something about this, but we don't know everything we need to know to really understand what's going on. During the covert operation where we attempted to engineer a regime change, what happened was we drove the Iranian currency down by 94% of value. So imagine, something happened and tomorrow all your dollars lost 94% of their purchasing power. That's the situation. So many people move to crypto to protect their assets and ability to transact. Now, under the sanctions regime, you can freeze. I didn't know you could seize.
I don't think that you can seize.
Well, he said seize. Now, what was interesting is there was a lot of shock when he first said this. And the question was, under the sanctions regime, how did they know that all of these wallets were either government or people who were under a specific sanction regime? Because I don't know how you seize $1 billion that fast without just taking everything in Iran. Now, after the questions started, they started coming out and saying, oh, it was just the Revolutionary Guard or this or that. How assets around the world by people who are Persian are somehow stolen from the Iranian government? There are a lot of questions here about whether this really does follow the legal process or not. So I have serious questions about it. But I think one of the things it does say is, if we're going to start issuing massive amounts of stablecoins under the Genius Act next year, you just need to understand that the US Treasury is free to seize your wallet whenever they want. This is not, this technology, and that's, I was very surprised that Bessent said this as publicly as he did, because if I were trying to market stablecoins worldwide, I would not want this to be my first act of marketing, saying, when you use our stablecoins, we can seize your wallets whenever we want, and we will.
Yeah, I mean, it's not legal. I'm just, it's not necessarily legal, but if the government does the seizure and there's nobody, what are you going to do? It's gone. But I want to recall when the Russians' assets were seized a few years ago, it was scandalous that
they weren't seized, they were wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I meant to say, when they were frozen, there was a seizure of the interest on those funds.
But
that was considered scandalous.
Right. That took years before they attempted to do the interest. And there was a whole process to do it. And certainly the Russians had plenty of time to know they were going to do it. And then when they did it, it was scandalous. So the idea you just seize it
That's worse.
and it's so much. Well, here's it's not only, and we don't have enough evidence and facts, but it looks to me like it's unlikely this is legal. That's number one. But number two, put aside whether it's legal or not, the communication to the world of if you use our stable coins, we can seize your wallets anytime and will. That is not a good marketing message.
Right.
And what it argues is that programmable money is not trustworthy, which is what we've been saying for many, many years. This money is not trustworthy. So,
Well, and it also means that the blockchain can be used to find out where it is. It's not
right,
anonymous.
right. A distributed ledger technology does, tees up programmable money and the ability to manipulate, control, seize, block, freeze, burn, etc. Anyway, next story, Lou. So this is a very special moment at the Solari Report. Elsa von Homelen, wonderful Dutch journalist who wrote Pharma Food, Dutch Farmers and Fishermen, said to me about a year ago, I don't want to hear any more about what's wrong. I want to hear about what we do about it, what our action is. And she has gone back and looked at all of the material that all of us have worked on for a long, long time about local action. I always say if I was going to write a book about the history of the Western world since World War II, it would be called How the Local Boys Got Rolled. And Elsa has put together a toolkit of how businessmen can get together and organize, or enterprise, families, everyone, what are the things we can do in our local area to take back our, literally our country's one neighborhood at a time. And it's a huge wealth of information. Carolyn and I spent a lot of time going through and editing it, make sure she had all the best links. And now this is subscriber only, it's a Solari Report, but it's a blockbuster of information. And she's done a series of interviews with people who are making enormous progress in their local areas. So it can be done and people are doing it. And Carolyn, we've now been out and about for the last month, and we're seeing a lot of people doing it. So
Right.
because of that, she was named Hero of the Week on the Solari Report. Every week we have a hero, and then every year we have a hero, and I cannot recommend to you enough. The world is full of great leaders. Elsa's one of them. And a lot of progress happens locally when we start supporting our real heroes instead of, I was complaining yesterday about one guy who's got a very popular interview podcast, and he's basically interviewing one of the Holocausters and treating them like they're fashionable. And I thought, what are you doing? So anyway, so the world is full of real leaders. We need to support them. Any other stories, Lou, or can we go to our incredible show? Thank you, Lou. Okay, scenario planning. I learned scenario planning to help our businesses be successful. And many corporations use scenario planning. And scenario planning is a wonderful tool. And the tool says, we don't necessarily know what the future is. We don't know what it will bring. But what we can do is we can define what the key variables are. And, so is the world going to war or not? Will the dollar diminish in value? These are different variables can be used. And every year at the Solari Report, we put together scenarios to help you with your planning for the next year. So Carolyn and I were in a meeting the other day, and there was wide divergence of opinion about whether we need to worry about the digital control grid. And one of the fellows who was at the meeting said, why don't you put together scenarios that show you the different possibilities of how bad the digital control grid may or may not get. And then we don't have to agree that the intention of the leadership is to build complete tyrannical control. we can just agree that there are many possible scenarios, that there is a percentage chance that what they say they're going to do, they're really going to try and do. And then we can all agree, even if it's only 10%, we should put up guardrails against programmable money. Because if that world happens, it's so dire. And that way people don't have to agree with you that the leadership's intention is really to go there. Okay, so we decided we would put together 4 scenarios, but this is a prototype. This is a first, we're in the invention room. So
First
Carolyn
draft.
and I thought we would
Beta.
first draft, and it's a beta testing. There you go. And we thought we would put it together and show it to the Financial Rebellion and CHD family and get your feedback. So we want your feedback because we want to make these really, really great scenarios and have this exercise really help people grapple with these issues. And I would just say we have a wonderful interview with my favorite trainer of scenario planning is Eric Best. And we have a wonderful interview with Eric Best at the Solari Report, and it really helps you understand how to use scenario planning as a tool. And it's designed to get you to, stop looking for prophets who can tell you what's going to happen next. Map out what the key variables are and the different ways it could go, and start to use scenario planning to help you open your mind and be prepared to rock and roll, because whatever the future will be, we know it will change, and it's changing fast. So let's take a look. Any other comments before we look at our...
Can I just say that if people do have comments, we have the Financial Rebellion email, and we also have intel@solari.com if you're not a subscriber, that we will get it. And it doesn't go through our Ask Catherine, which is only for subscribers. But if you'd like to use one of those, Lou, I don't know whether you've got the Financial Rebellion email ready to post, but we'll post it at some point. Oh, and there's this intel, yeah.
Right. And so again, we're gonna get feedback on this, and we're gonna keep evolving them until we really love them. Okay, so let's pull up the scenarios, Lou. So we have 2 axes on the scenario plane. The one is the digital control grid. Is it over on the right? You see, it's a complete control, complete tyrannical control. On the left, it's used benevolently. And so the question is, we know they're putting in the flock cameras. We know they're putting in the data centers. We know we have massive surveillance on the phones, on the TV, through the Wi-Fi, through the satellites, through the drones, so the surveillance system is going into place. And the question, will it be used for complete control, or will it be used in benevolent ways? So when your sheriff says, oh, the flock camera is just to arrest the criminals, that's the benevolent use. So for this axis, let me just show one video. The reason I believe that they want to go to complete control financially is because that's what the central bankers say. So we're going to play again our video of Augustine Carstens, head of the Bank of International Settlements, the central bank of central bank, in 2020 at an IMF panel describing why he loves CBDC, which is one form of programmable money. But when you hear him talk, he's describing programmable money, whether it's issued by the central bank through directly or through issuers working with the government or central bank, called programmable money, or stable coins, or many other things. So let's just play that video.
All our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that. those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
I love that clip. Okay, let's go back to the scenario, the scenarios for programmable money implementation. Okay, so the other axis, Carolyn, this was your choice. Why don't you describe this?
Yes, I said, well, a big part of the scenario is whether things are, the whole system is centralized or decentralized, because there are a lot of people, particularly in the financial area, who talk about the importance of decentralization of money. And so I propose that the y-axis be centralization versus decentralization.
Okay, so we have these two variables and centralization versus decentralization. Bring up the scenarios again. I want to keep it up while we're talking, Lou. And what that does is that creates four worlds. So if you have complete digital control, but it's decentralized, in that world, everybody's living in 15-minute cities and is very restricted, but there's an intimacy of being gathered together locally. On the top part, if it's highly centralized, you get plunder. And we did a wrap-up called Plunder last year and did wonderful interviews with Carolyn and Richard Werner and went through many of the documented cases of plunder around the world. This is a very common phenomena. It's been accelerating and happening a lot. And it helps to understand the different case studies. Some are done more gently, some are more violent. And so the range of physical violence or financial violence can be spread all over. And we give lots of case studies. But needless to say, this is a scenario where you're using the technology to for complete control. And this relates to the comment from the WEF, which is it's 2030 and you have no assets. Now, the way they said it, you have no assets and you're happy. The way I would say it is you have no assets and you're mind control. But as someone who believes strongly in family wealth and property rights, the idea of, yeah, here we are. You own nothing and you'll be happy.
Well, and arguably the one on the left is you're happy, but it really isn't happiness.
I
You're
don't know.
mind
I think
controlled if you're
when you
happy.
strip people of right. Okay, back to the scenarios, Lou.
So the upper right corner is the plunder, think Gaza, and you're a Gazan.
Right. Well, Gaza is is the Holocaust version. If you look at Russia in 1991 when it was plundered, you had a devastating loss of life, but it was because people's money was stolen and they literally had to grow their own food. And if you're in the city doing that, it's very hard to do. So you had tremendous death through financial destruction as opposed to, bombing.
But that's a
On the
top-down control. It's a
Right.
top-down control.
Right. So the Truman Show is on the left, and that's where, you're happy, so to speak. But you're to me, I don't want to live in that world. It's massive mind control. And then the world at the lower left quadrant is pushback, local money in local markets. And that's where the pushback is so much and so effective that you end up with much more power at a local level. And that's what ELSA's toolkit is designed to help people do. And what Carolyn and I are seeing all over the country is people are pushing back. And as you know, I'm an optimist. I think their intention is complete. I think their intention is on the right-hand side at complete tyranny, but I also think they don't have complete control. And if you look at our pushback, as our pushback increases, I think we can go, over to that lower left quadrant. So what we want to talk about today is when you look at scenario plan, it's important to look at this and say, well, I think, and take 100% and allocate it to the four quadrants. I think this scenario has 10% chance of happening. I think this, has 20%. You allocate your percentages, and then you make sure you have a plan for whichever way it goes. And because you understand the variables as the world unfolds and the future unfolds, you can track and sort of bob and weave because you're prepared for all possible scenarios. So what Carolyn and I want to talk about today is the first topic is why we are so confident that the leadership's intent is exactly what Augustine Carstens says it is. In other words, he says we want to make the rules on how you can use your money, and we have the power to enforce them centrally. That's what he said.
So
And
the official story is that we're all on the left-hand side in the lower left, where the technology is being used benevolently for our benefit. And what we're saying, we're calling that into question and saying, well, look at the right-hand side. What is the percentage chance that you're wrong about this all being being put through by a bunch of benevolent, we want to optimize for all people group?
Right. And here's the important thing to understand. We're working with some wonderful legislators and technologists and people from all walks of life. And what we're trying to do is put guardrails up on programmable money. And I think it's important to understand we don't need to agree that that's what the leadership is going to do, but we can agree that there is some percentage chance, and you have to put up the guardrails just in case. So it's very interesting. There was 200 crypto firms that just put out a big letter saying, pass the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is an act going through Congress. It's passed the House. It's being negotiated in the Senate. And it's a push to get a framework up for digitization of all kinds. Right now, there is an effort by the banks to move bank deposits to the distributed ledger technology. There is an effort by the the DTC, to move all stocks and bonds to a distributed ledger. We know that the Genius Act provides for stablecoins and payments to be moved to the distributed ledger. Once all your currency and all your stocks and bonds
And your
and all
property.
your that
Could be your property.
The Clarity Act will give that, but as far as I know, I'm not familiar with a massive effort by the real estate industry to get property on distributed ledger
There's
right
talk
now.
of it,
But
though.
oh, absolutely, there's talk, and the Clarity Act will help facilitate that. But it's important for you to know bank deposits, stable coins, stocks and bonds. Now, what is that going to do? That's going to make it possible. Yeah, let's watch Larry Fink describe this, head of BlackRock. Go ahead, play this one, Lou. Oh, you don't have audio. Okay. So what is that going to do? What that's going to do is give the possibility that an automated third lock can be put on your money. Now, what is an automated third lock? We know what happened to the Canadian truckers. Their money was turned off, their bank accounts frozen. Other people have had their bank accounts seized. Other people have had, anyway. So let's just talk about what a 2-lock and 3-lock system is. In a 2-lock system, there's a buyer and seller. If Carolyn and I are exchanging cash, we both have a veto on that transaction, and it can only happen if we both agree. So we both have a lock, so to speak. Now, there are more and more laws in the financial system, whether it's anti-money laundering or know your customer or sanction regime from Treasury, that says we require financial institutions to intercede and cancel your bank account or freeze your money for a variety of things. But that's a manual third lock. The government has to communicate the rules. They have to prove the financial institution this is done under the law. A human being has to check it before that lock is applied. And if it is applied and somebody debanks or freezes a transaction, you have an ability to call the institution, talk to them, appeal the
lawyers.
decision. You have the ability to go to court. Right, get a lawyer and go challenge it, okay? So it's a manual third lock and you have a process to deal with it that is a process controlled by humans. In the 3-lock transaction where you automate it, once you get everything on a distributed ledger and you automate that automated lock can work from central headquarters, just like Augustine Carson said. And your financial institution may not be involved. You may not be, there's no one to call, and there's no process that we know of to deal with that. And literally, they can just take your money. I remember when the Biden administration had a controller of the currency nominee up 3 weeks before her testimony, she had written in the Vanderbilt Law Review, the great thing about she said CBDC, but that's just a form of programmable money. She said, the great thing is if you're worried about inflation, you just freeze everybody's bank accounts, right?
She said that.
She said, no, she wrote it in the Vanderbilt Law Review.
She said it in a law review article.
Right. She said it in a law review article. Anyway, so when you apply an automated third lock, you can take literally every human out of the system. So we just responded to one of the rulemakings under the Genius Act. Solarius now published 2 comment letters and said, no one should be able to freeze, block, burn, or do any of these other actions without a human review. The software can, scan, the software can recommend, but a human has to make the decision and be responsible. And of course, we know that slows down. The idea that you could literally go in and decide, okay, these 5 million people have been saying too much on social media, we're just going to freeze all their accounts. If you did that manually, it would take just an enormous workload and a long time. But if you do it automatically, it's like zip. And that's what Bessent just explained. He took $1 billion of wallets and just seized their wallets, and now they can't use them. Their money's gone. That means a family could starve. In a war condition, you just took all their money. So the automatic third lock is very dangerous. Okay, so one of the things we said as we were preparing this, why do we want to talk about 2 scenarios. The first scenario is the Plunder scenario. Why? But we want to talk about why we are so confident that they want to use this technology to move to complete control, both spatial control and financial control. Why do we believe that they are absolutely intent on doing this? So we wanted to walk through our reasons and then walk through our reasons why we are confident the pushback will be so great that this can be stopped. So let's start with you, Carolyn. Let's just go down it was amazing because I said, let's come up with 10 reasons. And I think we came up with 20.
Right. Do we have those typed out or do I need to bring that up?
We have the email, but
okay, I've got it in front of me. So which one are we calling? The centralization with Mr. Global? Is that the one we're doing Plunder? How do we know
so
that's the plan?
But really the question but not that Plunder is the plan, but complete digital control is the plan.
Right.
How do we know on that first access that they intend to go to complete digital control? And that is their intention. So the question is, why are we confident that's their intention? So I'll just start with the first one, because they said so. They absolutely said so. And I want to show 2 more videos that show you what their intention is. If we could play the Bowley video, Lou. So Bowley was at the Chinese Central Bank and then became
help improve financial inclusion is because of its legal tender status. Because CBDC is an obligation of central bank. And the obligation of central bank is a legal tender in every country. So it is widely accepted. That creates potential value for everyone to use it. And finally, the third way we think CBDC can improve financial inclusion is through what we call programmability. That is, CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program, to create smart contract, to allow targeted policy functions. For example, welfare payment. For example, consumption coupon. For example, food stamp. By programming CBDC, those money can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized, for example, for food. So this potential programmability can help government agencies to precisely target their support to those people who need support. So that way can also improve financial inclusion.
Doesn't that warm your heart?
Well, what he doesn't say is that it works.
China.
What he doesn't say is it works both ways. I mean, the government can give you something, but the government can also take something away. Or the Fed, or the central bank, in the case of CBDCs.
So he's talking about CBDCs, but if you look, the U.S. is not proceeding immediately with CBDCs. They're proceeding with stablecoins, which are issued by private issuers and linked up to all the systems that could deliver that control. So they have to align with the Treasury and be able to implement whatever controls the Treasury, I believe, puts through. So, and we have an article at Solari on the Genius Act and its implications for financial transaction freedom, and we've done 4 legislative briefings at Solari on the sort of how programmable money works and the implications on what it means to the use of programmable money through a public-private partnership. I liken it to the public partnership you had with Twitter. So the government was giving Twitter the rules on how it was going to censor, but then under the law, most people didn't begin to have any way to push back because Twitter's private and somehow they can do whatever they want. So the government's pulling the strings, but there's no accountability because you can't go directly after the government. You can't go after Twitter because it's a private company. And so you have this public-private partnership, which is much more evil. And I think the stablecoin construct is much, much more dangerous than the central bank digital currency, because the central bank has public disclosure and various obligations to the citizenry that the private issuers do not.
Well, and many people say, oh, well, they would never do that. But they did. And that's called jawboning. When the government doesn't have a firm position legally, but is able to whisper in the ears of the people in control and say things like, well, we could put in the liability for whatever happens on your platform that you are now relieved of under the law. We could change that if you don't want to cooperate with us.
So I want to show one more video, and this is Neil Kashkari in 2023. He's the president of the Minneapolis Fed, explaining why, and this is how bad it is. You have the president of Federal Reserve Bank, of one of the 12 Federal Reserve banks, telling you why you should never do this.
He may regret what he did, given that we publicize it all over the place. He may regret what he said.
I don't think so. I don't think Neil Kashkari wants his children to live under this kind of control.
I keep asking anybody at the Fed or outside of the Fed to explain to me what problem this is solving. I can send anybody in this room $5 with Venmo right now. Right? No, seriously. So what is it that a CBDC could do that Venmo can't do? And all I get is a bunch of hand waving. I get well, maybe it's better for financial inclusion. Maybe it's better for cross-border remittances. Maybe. Is there any evidence that it is? And, they say, well, what about China? China's doing it. Well, I can see why China would do it. If they want to monitor every one of your transactions, you could do that with the central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. If you want to impose negative interest rates, you could do that with the central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. And if you want to directly tax customer accounts, you could do that with the central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. So I get why China would be interested. Why would the American people be for that?
That's what amazes me, that the American people would ever support this. So let's tear through, because I want to move to the pushback. So let's tear through in 5 minutes and talk about all the reasons quickly that we take them at their word. I believe they're going to do it because they say they're going to do it. And some of them are saying, don't do this.
Right.
So their own debate points to an intention to do this. And billions of dollars have been spent by them figuring out how to do this. So, they are intent, and the speed at which we're moving everything in the financial system over to the distributed ledger that gives us the technological ability to do this is there. We are passing the Clarity Act, and there are no guardrails in the Clarity Act, none. And my attitude is, if they don't want to use distributed ledger technology to strip people of their constitutional rights, including their property rights and human rights, why wouldn't they put up guardrails? And my message back to the 200 firms that signed the crypto letter is, if the utility industry had been as irresponsible as you folks, many of our ancestors would have been electrocuted. So you need to put up guardrails before this thing passes, or it shouldn't pass. Anyway, so Carolyn, let's run down your reasons for thinking.
Okay, remember the WHO declared pandemic, which was centralized across the world, and many of us have seen verbatim statements by leaders in different countries. It obviously was coordinated from top down, and the lockdowns and all of that was ubiquitous, other than in Africa, where there were several leaders who pushed back and were killed. Propaganda and mind control, the media acting in lockstep, reporting official reality in TV and movies and news. It's coming straight out of the official reality, and we all know that there are a lot of things not being reported and a lot of things not in our TV and movies, dramatizations. CBDC proposals obviously are part of it. Digital and real ID. Everything, the encouragement to put everything on your cell phone, and institution of 5G and 6G. We do not need 5G and 6G to use our computers better. It enables surveillance, and there are cell towers everywhere, and the proposed rules from the Federal Communications Commission would even more remove local control than what exists now, so that the people do not have control over whether there are cell towers going up. Data centers all over the place, planned and often in secret, with non-disclosure agreements with local officials until it's almost too late to stop them, so that local people can't start pushing back from the beginning. Regulatory support for taking out.
Let me just mention something about the data centers. If you look at the capacity we're building in the United States, this is far more capacity than we need for your texts and files in the cloud, or AI to make companies productive. Right. This is the capacity you need for heavy surveillance. The flock cameras and a lot of the spatial control surveillance is heavy video. And then if you look at stablecoin, if you look at stocks and bonds, bank deposits, and stablecoins all in a distributed ledger with an automated third lock, that's a huge data hog, right? And so the question is, why do they need this massive capacity unless it's for surveillance and that automated third lock control? And if you look at the economics of building all these data centers, it's hugely, you're talking about massive allocation of capital, including now trying to draw from our retirement savings to finance it. And the reason that such an economic investment would be justified is if it gives you ability to control all the assets in the world, then it makes economic sense. If it's to make companies productive, it makes no economic sense. It's far too much capacity. So anyway, please continue.
Yes, we have regulatory and executive order support for taking out the investors, the private equity and other big guy investors in things like Bitcoin and losing projects that the private equity has taken over. So and also in the form, well, this would be in the form of rules that would allow limited liability on behalf of fiduciaries of 401ks. 401ks are what the regular people have their money in, and it can also be in their public employee, retirement systems. And the rules are being made more open to the investment by the fiduciaries in investments that the big guys, the Epstein class, would otherwise lose money on, and they can be taken out and dump that junk on the 401ks with liability shields for anybody who's involved in that. Then,
so let me bring up two, because we're going to have to jump to pushback pretty quickly. So I would say between the bailouts, the missing money, and the going direct reset, this is a group of people who've stolen $55 trillion, right?
mm-hmm.
In other words, we've had a financial coup, and we're being told the country is dangerously in debt when our debt is $39 to $40 trillion, but they've stolen $55 trillion. So, I don't expect benevolent treatment by people who steal 100% of the assets and then throw you in a debt trap. And I would point out, we just saw legislation adopted in the NDAA to integrate the U.S. military with the Israeli military, and to integrate, according to the Senate, the American Intelligence Agency with the Israeli Intelligence Agency. And Israel has been the leader of building information technology for the purpose of control and place-based control, spatial control, and financial control. And, we've done a lot on the Solari report about why we believe that Gaza is a method. But you're talking about taking the people who are the leaders in population control using very invasive technology for both control and war, and integrating them into your military in a way that destroys the sovereignty of your country. And we know around the world that populations, when a leadership wants to control their population, what do? They bring in foreign military or foreign mercenaries. And the United States is now doing that. And, we've seen a lot of indication that many of the immigrants who are being brought in are being used to integrate into the U.S. military. And we now have the U.S. military in Los Angeles doing exercises in the city to prepare for urban warfare. So to me, this looks very threatening. I would also say one of the greatest arguments is we have seen enough disclosure on the Epstein case to know that we have enormous numbers of people who have engaged in illegal activities. As far as I know, we have not seen one prosecution. Not
and
one.
it goes a
Okay.
ways back. Who got bailed out in the mortgage crisis? Was it the borrowers or was it the banks?
It was according to Leaving Institute, 29 trillion of total bailouts or loans, and we know $8 trillion would have paid off all the mortgages in the country. So quite a bailout. Okay, we have many more reasons. We're not going to get to them all, Carolyn, but I would suggest we're going to start writing up all of our reasons why we think the intent is going to complete control. But you don't have to agree with us. What we're hoping you agree is, even if you think it's a tiny percent, that you will agree, why not put up guardrails? Why not put up guardrails? Okay, so let's just go back to the four scenarios, Lou, and let's just take a look at pushback. Because I have to tell you, all over the country, we are seeing people push back, and it is a beautiful thing. So, Carolyn, pick out the reasons why you think pushback is going to happen.
Well, we've got the proliferation of farmers markets and other markets and local entrepreneurs starting businesses. We have talk of mesh networks. We have this, we have the capability. There's a guy named Keone, and I forget what his last name is, who went to jail for basically making the wallet with a distributed ledger not be private, so that the government and nobody else, including the government, could invade it. We've got Solari circles and local chapters of Children's Health Defense and Weston Price who are active in food freedom and health freedom. We have local food distribution systems like Azure Standard and farm-to-table restaurants. We have alternative health measures that are becoming very popular: supplements, health through better nutrition. We have off-grid healthcare systems. Solar and other off-grid, solar and other off-grid energy systems, state cash preservation legislation to protect cash, move to buy old cars and that don't have surveillance in them, and to continue to have gas guzzling, so-called gas guzzling, as opposed to electric cars, which can be centrally controlled. We have brain-machine interfaces could be used to help people restore movement of people who've been disabled. So that's a good thing that actually could happen with it, although we don't think that's the main reason for doing it. And we could use
Right, but I think it's a good point that this technology could be used in wonderful ways, don't you think?
right Rumbas to go in
Right.
and disable bombs rather than human
Right.
beings that could be blown up. Yeah,
Right.
that's
Right.
my list.
Right. Okay, so I just want to focus on one thing I saw. So I've been, I love to travel by car, and I went to Toronto, then Wisconsin, then Sioux Falls, then Salt Lake, and where I saw you. We met in Salt Lake, and then we went to Albuquerque. Now I'm outside of Oklahoma City, and then I'll get back to Tennessee today. But everywhere I've gone, I'm seeing a new awareness, and I'm seeing tremendous interest in community currencies and building. It's great to have farmers markets, and it's great to have all sorts of groups coming together. But if we can find ways of transacting, it's wonderful. So this is the first time I'm seeing real interest in doing local barter networks or time networks or community currencies. And I see that as a wonderful development towards this world of pushback. That people are beginning to say, oh, we need to take matters into our own hands. The other thing is, and I think you've seen it, we've been working with a group of state legislators and treasurers and auditors and other state officials who are really stepping up and saying, okay, whatever the scenarios are, we want to do an effective job of leading through this. And we can take responsibility at the state and local government to do that. And if they can start to get support, it's going to make a huge difference. When I was in South Dakota, I stopped and recorded an interview with Susan Luchas, who runs Team Cash on the Solari Report. And we're doing Turtling for Cash Part 2, which we'll publish next week. And I'm very excited about it, because I will tell everybody who's listening to it, so you're thinking, what can I do? One thing we can all do is have a cash revolution. So just say a few words about that, Carolyn.
Well, yeah, that's the one private thing that you can do is make purchases without it going through your cell phone, without it going into a great big data beast, where advertisers and others can use the information against you. And cash is something that you make the payment and there's no record other than what you write down in your checkbook or other entry that and your receipt, which nobody gets, presumably, with your name on it, because you aren't giving your digital ID when you're paying with cash.
So I walked away from all the different meetings we've had on this trip saying, we have to double down on cash. We just have to double down on cash. One of the things we're working on at Solari is we have model legislation at our financial transaction freedom website for cash and to put guardrails up on programmable money, but it's time to help states adopt the right of every citizen to have a non-digital life. If government will take the position they have to interact on an analog basis with paper and with cash, we can preserve the analog world. And we have to.
I just want to comment that when I went to Crate and Barrel, I paid cash for something and they wanted my information because they want to feed the database, even though I'm paying with cash. Why do they need my identity if I'm paying cash? So watch out for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've seen you know, in a Kinko's, they wouldn't accept a FedEx package unless I gave them chapter and verse. It was unbelievable. Anyway, that's it for today. We are going to work on this. We welcome your feedback and we thank you for your feedback. We're going to work on this until we have really good scenarios and really good tight reasons. And you know, but if there's one takeaway, push back in whatever way you're led to. But one thing you can all do and we should all do is use cash. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on Financial Rebellion. Thank you, Karen.
My name is Patricia. I go by Carol Thornburg.
You're Carol?
Yes.
All right, Carol. So you took quite a lot of Pfizers.
I took 3. I had the 2 shots plus 1 booster.
Now, why did you think it was a good idea to get the Pfizer COVID shot?
I've been a nurse for 42 years, so I knew that vaccines were helpful to most people. But the physicians suggested it also.
So you've been a nurse for so long, and did you administer vaccinations as a nurse?
I did not. I worked mostly in critical care, recovery room, and operating room, and anesthesia tech.
So you never questioned because you've been in the medical?
Right.
So your doctor said it was a good idea for you to have?
Yes.
So how did you feel after the first one?
After the first one, I had it February the 3rd of 21. Within about a week to 10 days, I started having low oxygen saturation, coughing, wheezing. I treated myself a week and a half before I went to a walk-in clinic, and they gave me an albuterol inhaler, antibiotic, steroid shot, did a chest x-ray, and just said I had an upper respiratory infection.
Okay, so they decided it was good for you to go and have another one.
I kept asking my PCP, do you think my low oxygen and shortness of breath is related to the vaccine? It happened so quickly after I had that shot. I'd never had a problem with low oxygen before. She said, absolutely not. That's not the problem. And so she ordered cardiac stress test, an echo, sent me to a cardiologist, and my tests were all negative. She did a pulmonary function test, was normal. And then I kept questioning her, and she said, no, it's not that. So Dumbo here took the second shot. And then I had the booster because they kept saying no.
So after the second shot, did you have more problems or not?
It was just about the same. It had low oxygen, 87 and 88%. Deep breathing, bring it up to about 91, 90. And then in 22, August of 22, I took COVID. and my oxygen dropped to 83 and 84%. And I couldn't get it up with hyperventilating. No matter how deep I breathed, I couldn't get it up to 90. So I ended up in the hospital for 5 days.
And what did they do with you in the hospital?
They gave me, it's the IV therapy. It starts with an R. I don't remember the name.
You didn't get remdesivir?
Yes.
They gave you that? Are you sure?
For 3 days. IV.
Dear God.
And I was on oxygen. And
It's unusual to give a vaccinated person remdesivir, viewers. Are you sure it was remdesivir?
it was something they give for COVID.
Okay, interesting. All right. Okay, so how did you feel after that?
About the same. My oxygen finally, after about 3 weeks at home on oxygen, I started weaning myself off of it because I'd wake up in the morning and my O2 would be at the foot of the bed. And so I just kept breathing deep and trying to keep my oxygen up on my own. But
then you went for the booster.
Yes. And then everything I just never was any better. I mean, it stayed 87, 88. But all the doctors I went to, my pulmonologist, cardiologist, I had increased dizziness. She referred me to a ENT specialist. He did V&Gs and put me in therapy for dizziness. And then my vision. I had visual problems. I couldn't read. Left to right eye movement made the whole room spin.
So when you say you couldn't read, what was it, like fuzzy or something? What were you seeing?
I just couldn't read left to right. It just made me too dizzy. I couldn't see well. So I went to my ophthalmologist. She did another eye exam. She said, I assure you it is not your eyes, it's neuro. And I thought, my goodness, neuro? How can that be? And then I got a droopy eyelid on the right. So my PCP ordered an MRI of the brain and referred me to a neurologist here in town. And he referred me to another doctor. He said, I think you might be able to help her. She was out of town at the time, but gave her my information and she texted me. I sent her all of my information, all of my test results, D-dimmer for blood clots, blood work, echo, stress test, the test I had at ENT doctor, my eye exams, everything was normal. But they still kept saying, no, it's not the vaccine that caused it. All of them. The neurologist, he said, I believe you.
That was nice of him.
I believe you. And I cried. Because nobody believed me. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So, this physician ordered me ivermectin, put me on albuterol and budesonide breathing treatments, nebulizer. My oxygen started coming back up. I went to my PCP in June of last year, of 23. I wrote down what medications I was taking. She walked through the door, she slammed the door open, yelling at me. Why did you go see her? Why are you seeing her? Why are you on albuterol? You don't have asthma. Why are you taking that? I said, look at my oxygen saturation. It's 97 today. It's the best it's been in 2.5 years. She said, Well, why did you see her? And who sent you to her? Well, I told her. She was screaming at me. And she was standing within a foot of me, 1.5 feet. I was on the end of the exam table. She's standing right beside of me. She said, I suggest if you trust her better than you do me, you just go to her.
Okay.
I looked her square in the eye and I said, do you really want to know what I think? I said, I don't trust none of you. And by then I had my voice very raised also.
Were you there at that time?
I wasn't with her that time.
No, you were not. Okay.
And so then she said, do you really want to know why your oxygen's low? I said, yes, I would. Have we not? You've sent me to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in town. And that's what we've been trying to find out for 2.5 years. Why is my oxygen saturation staying low? You've sent me to all these specialists. All my tests have been normal. My blood work for blood clots has been normal. Everything's normal. But my body is saying there's something wrong. And then she looked at me and she said, it's because you're morbidly obese and you have cardiovascular disease. I said, pardon me, but fat people breathe, and this fat girl had no problem breathing until I had that vaccine. And then I started to ask her another question. She looks at her watch and she says, your time is up. I'll send the nurse in to take you for your blood work. That's the last time I've seen her, and I don't plan on seeing her ever again.
Quite right.
The manager of the facility I went to knew. They must have heard us yelling at each other. She knew all about it. And the next day she changed me to a different PCP.
Good. Now, how are you feeling today?
Today, I'm doing well. My oxygen is staying. The lowest it's been, I had a problem first day of January. My oxygen dropped down to 83 and 84. The physician that was treating me with my albuterol and the ivermectin put me on ivermectin for 10 days, prednisone for 9 days, and put me back on my 6 breathing treatments a day of the albuterol and budesonide. My oxygen came back up, but I did not call my PCP because I knew there'd be no need in doing that. So she texted me back within 5 minutes after I notified her on the first day of January and told me what to do. My oxygen this morning when I got up was 92%. Take a deep breath, it goes up to 95, 96, 97. It's doing better.
Good.
I feel better.
Good. Now, what are we going to do going forward about vaccinations?
Well, in December, my PCP walked in. He said, oh, I see you need your second booster. I said, don't even go there with me. I refuse more vaccines for COVID. I will not take them. Well, what about the RSV? I said, don't mention that to me either. I said, I'm refusing all these injections. I'm not taking any more. That one about killed me, but you all don't believe me. But I will not take any more COVID vaccines.
Can you try and be very careful about all of them? Because as you walk around this bus, you'll see that pretty much every single one has got a death or an injury attached to it. And we don't want anything to happen to you after what just happened to you. Okay? I'll give you a book.
Okay.
A science book. You'll like it because you're a nurse. Wow, what a journey. What about you? Did you get them?
I got them.
How are you feeling?
I feel okay.
You feel okay?
But I won't take any more.
You're not going to take any more either.
No.
Your husband, right?
Yes.
Yes, your husband's sitting behind, doesn't want to be on camera. But he had them, and he's now also not going to have any more. See, people are waking up.
My sister, younger sister, had a mini stroke.
After a COVID shot?
After her first COVID injection. So the neurologist that referred me to the doctor that's treating me told her not to ever take another one again. So she can't have them anymore. And I have a cousin, a first cousin. After her first injection, she ended up in the hospital and is on permanent oxygen. So
it's terrible.
It's horrible.
Well, now you're going to sign the bus. We're going to go and sign the bus.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for telling a story.
Thank you.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.